Well, let's see whether or not we're streaming. I'll pop on over to Twitch and see what it has to say. Doom, doom, doom. It seems to be spitting out ads, so I guess that's working fine. And now we'll post to Twitter. How exciting. Alright, well, I don't expect to get very many visitors today, very many audience members today. I've heard that there is some kind of event happening, and a lot of people are going to watch that instead. And my streams are not the most epic, exciting things in the world. So, where were we? Well, we were doing some ship-related stuff, and we had finished making some slight improvements to the visuals, but of course that was just putting off what we actually need to do, and there are a couple of big pieces left to this puzzle. Obviously, one of the big pieces is the missing characters. I haven't put in any characters yet, so it's pretty not gamey at the moment. And the other thing that's missing is the ability to properly deal with the interiors of our various rooms. Now, it may come as a shock to you, but these are related issues. In order to be able to do the people, I need to have the things that the people really interact with. And in order to do the rooms, I need to have a concept of what the heck the people are going to be doing in them. It's super dangerous to just go off half-assed about this sort of thing. So, we're not going to half-ass it. We're going to talk a little bit about it, and we're going to do some design stuff. I guess this might be a bit of a game design episode instead of a game programming episode. Let me go ahead and open up some whiteboard material here. And we'll doodle a little bit. There we go. I guess I should post to Twitter something more useful than that. I'll be talking about game dev, game design today. Probably not much coding. Game dev, or indie dev. And streaming. Yay! And then I'll delete the old one, because I don't need two of them in a row. Oh, interesting. The old one's already too far back in the stream. Oh well, I guess I will not see it. Okay, so where were we? We were going to talk about game design a little bit. And I'm having some problems with the stream. If anybody's listening, let me know whether or not you can see the stream and hear the stream all right. I changed my setup quite a lot, so I'm not sure 100% that it's working. So, let's take a look at our options. Now, the basic idea of the Galactic Line is gonna have to be oh, that's the wrong button. Try that again. So the basic idea of the Galactic Line is that we want to have the Sims in space. But there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to do the Sims in space, and it's not simply because I like the idea. I think there's a lot of room for allowing that kind of flexibility, that kind of game with a lot of flexibility, enough flexibility that you could easily expand it into other sorts of gameplay and other sorts of things. You can forge a good backbone. If you are targeting the Sims in space, then whatever technical backbone you come up with can be reused for a lot of other kinds of games. Whereas if you were to forge it so that you could make a shooter game in space, you'd never be able to do the Sims in space. And I'm having a really, really bad time with Twitch today. That's interesting, just how far behind it's falling. Maybe I should whitelist Twitch. I finally had to install ad block on this on this system because it was just getting too crappy. All right. So now it's spitting out ads at me. I guess it just wanted my desperately wanted my attention. All right. So the idea of this is that you'll have some kind of spaceship, and you'll be flying through space, and you'll be managing the people aboard the spaceship. But we have to think about what that means in terms of the actual gameplay and the engine that's required to run it. Now, one of the big deals here is that you can run it however fast or however slow you want. From slower than real time to a lot faster, like a week per second. And in fact, you can run it without any ship loaded. So runs in asset mode or unloaded in various ways. Now, there's a lot of really simple tricks that we can do to fix that, but we have to keep in mind that the characters, where they are in the ship, is not a big concern. It's not something that we're going to be keeping track of with any kind of effectiveness. The only time it'll matter is when you're running slowly enough to actually watch people walking from place to place. And that does change how we want to interact with our characters. Because if we're not interacting with them moment to moment, then we're interacting with them from day to day or from hour to hour. And that's more of a scheduling thing rather than, rather than a click to move. It's click to schedule. Now, obviously, there are plenty of events that happen and plenty of things that happen over the course of our game, but when we're approaching this, we have to think about it in terms of scheduling, not in terms of forward AI. We're not thinking of what is the character going to do next. We're not trying to extrapolate what the character's needs are. We have a very simple situation for us. We have a schedule, and the character runs through that schedule. And even if the ship is unloaded, as long as we know what point in time we are along that schedule, we'll know what the character is doing, and we'll know whether or not they've run out of food and all that stuff. So, just as an example, if you have 3 crew that eat 3 food per day each, then you have 9 food per day cost. So you can easily determine end days ahead, what's the food, and you can also determine when we run out. And all of that can be done without loading the ship at all. The only thing we have to know is that the ship exists in a specific formation and has a starting point at a specific time with a specific amount of food. And this is basically the core of the simulation section of the game. So we're not going to be thinking about, going to the fridge and ordering $10 worth of pastrami or whatever. This isn't really The Sims in that way. What we're thinking about doing is setting up a crew in a situation where we can always predict what's ahead, where we're going to be. So if we're thinking about it in those terms, we can think, what is fun about people games? And this is where it starts to become obvious that that approach isn't enough, because setting them up as machines is not really interesting. So if we just have 3 people that eat 3 food, it might as well just be 3 computer chips or plus 3 to a module somewhere. It's important for us to have this backbone, and so that we can have players that want to try and do fun things. But in order to enable the doing of fun things, we have to keep in mind what fun things there are going to be to do. And this is not going to be the focus. Not really. It's going to be sort of the foundation, but like with most houses, the foundation doesn't really get very much notice. So what we're going to want to do is think about what does make managing crews interesting. And that would be things like interpersonal relationships, personal arcs. Stat growth / crew crew effect arc. I don't know what you would call it. Crew effect growth, i.e. someone grows into their role in the crew, someone does a better job. So this is an arc. So this is an arc. This is an arc. This may be an arc, maybe not. But a lot of the fun things that also happen are just random noise. Well, I'm getting really bad performance from the stream, although I don't know if anyone's listening, so I can't tell if anyone else is getting bad performance from the stream. I don't want to boot the stream up again because it will break it in the middle of this dialogue. So if you happen to be listening, let me know whether or not you can see the stream. And let me know if the stream is working. So random noise, these would be the Simsy type things like you know, exploding toilets, parties, sleeping randomly. Stuff that doesn't really have any strong relationship to an arc or anything. It's just fun. But we also have the player-driven arcs. Player-driven arcs include everything from shaping a character to trapping them all in the pool and watching them drown. So all of these things, and maybe even more, you know, customization. All of these things have a lot of use, a lot of fun. Day to day, what do you want to call it? Touchstone. This would be things like setting up your characters to wear certain things, or you know, have a specific thing that they do frequently, so that you feel like they exist. So let's go ahead and try and separate these into a couple of. This is, by the way, the sort of thing I do just when I'm doing this kind of design. I generally do this sort of thing offline, but I figured I've got to stream something, and nobody's going to be listening today. I might as well stream something that takes a lot of focus. So let's split this up into a couple of different categories if we can figure it out. So we're going to go ahead and have number 1, touchstones. So touchstone activities or touchstone play mechanics are the ones that get the player connected with the characters. And that would mean customization, outfits, ranks, personality, goals, this sort of thing. And those are really important to establishing the player's connection with the crew. Moreover, they should be fast and universal. Now, the reason for that is because these are things where if you get another player's crew, you want to go, oh, okay, I know exactly what's going on with this crew. You know, there's the goofy one, there's the captain, there's the technician, all that stuff. And you can not only tell what their roles are, but who they are, what they're going to be doing over the course of the game. So number 2 would be the machine elements, the mechanistic elements. And this would be stat growth, role in crew, you can have a couple of other things here, but the idea here is that the mechanistic elements are going to be ones where this will drive you to try and create something that can be judged as fit or unfit in the game universe. So an example of mechanistic sims in The Sims would be, you've got someone that goes out and does his day job, or you've got someone you lock up in the basement and he just paints all the time and you sell his paintings off, and that's his role. So there's a lot of these dominant strategies. I spelled that wrong. And self-challenges. Like, can you make a crew that is claustrophobic? All of your crew is claustrophobic on a space station. Or can you make a ship that never requires any sort of resupplying? Those sorts of self-challenges are a lot of fun, and they crop up in places that you can't foresee. Obviously, you can come up with as many self-challenges as you'd like, but you're never going to come up with the same ones as your players, especially if there's a community of players. Good example of that is Kerbal. There have been, weekly or monthly challenges posted for Kerbal for years now, and some of them are very complicated, and some of them are really unusual, and so you get a lot of constraints and self-challenges, and the mechanistic elements are going to be important to allowing that. And this is also key because they're not just mechanistic elements. These all mix together. So when you have some mechanistic elements, those are going to interact with the touchstone elements and with whatever number 3 is and whatever number 4 is. So you need to have mechanistic elements to give some of your players something to grip. And now mechanistic elements are definitely the easiest part for me because I've already finished building them. All of my prototypes were mechanistic, and the prototypes worked well. I don't have any concerns about having it so that your crew is fun and interesting to set up on a wide variety of ships that you can also set up. That part, really easy. So it'd be things like daily work and getting tired, or what do you want to call it, space sickness. All that stuff can be put into the mechanistic elements, but those can also be merged into the arc elements. So what's an arc element? That's number 3. By the way, if anybody has any thoughts on this, feel free to let me know, whether it's during the stream or way after the stream, because I don't think anyone's going to watch today. So arc elements are the things which will keep you going over the long missions in space. Now, in The Sims, arc elements are very, very straightforward. You have a personality, and your personality just spits out things that you want to do at any given time. And while they don't lead, precisely from one to the other, the fact that you have a specific personality or a specific job will lead you to have connected objects, connected opportunities. If you're a cop, you get cop-related opportunities at your job. If you're an evil genius, you get evil genius-related opportunities, and so on and so forth. If you're greedy, you get greed-related opportunities. These things allow players to try and moderate their performance over a long period of time. The character's performance, that is, not the player's performance. And that's going to be doubly important for us. It's going to be super important for us because our spaceships spend a lot of time out in space. In fact, they spend so much time out in space that it's almost not even worth calling it space travel, because it's like the only real difference between a facility and a spaceship for our purposes is that you can't escape from the spaceship. So our arc elements are what are going to keep our players juggling our characters as they play the game. So if you set out for a mission and it's going to take you 3 months to get there, we don't want the players to go, 3 months. We want the players to think, okay, well, during that 3 months, I can get these two characters. Their arcs are going to be able to be, pursued together, so I can work them up. I should probably plan on how to do the next element in this guy's arc, and so on and so forth. But it's easy to get bogged down, so we have to be careful to Not much headspace. Keep light. So the reason for that is because we're going to have a lot of times where the player is going to leave the game for a while, and they're eventually going to come back, but we don't want them to come back and think, oh my god, I can't remember a damn thing. We want them at all times to be able to pop up, even if it's someone else's ship, they've never even seen it before. We want them to instantly know what arcs are going on, or conversely, instantly be allowed to discard those arcs with no ill will, no penalty, and create new arcs. So this probably means some explicit arcs and some automatic arcs. I.e., if you've got someone whose arc is going to be, he wants to become a better star mapper, or he wants to become a better navigator, he's going to have these explicit options to do so. And that is basically the mission system, although it is several missions in a row. So if you want to be a better navigator, your character is going to barf up these opportunities to take missions that will make him a better navigator. But not all arcs are inside of the framework of the game. For example, you may want your navigator and your captain to start dating. I don't really feel like the game needs to get too aggressive about offering those things. Maybe I can certainly see a setting that would allow them to just do that, but oftentimes the player is going to be the one that decides, who gets to date whom. And other sorts of opportunities also will arise. Like, you might be thinking, well, I'm kind of training this guy up, but actually I plan to trade him out later on. I'll put him on a different spaceship that needs his particular skill set that's going off to this other part of the galaxy or whatever. And so there are a lot of arcs that are not going to be within the game world. But we should try and make the individual chunks of arc represented as missions. That way, even if you leave, you can come back and you can say, okay, look, George is trying to train up his nav skill. Obviously, he is a navigator who is trying to, outdo himself. Not all of these missions are arc missions, though. You're going to have missions like repair the engine core. That's not an arc mission. It's just something that needs to be done. Similarly, something like scan for minerals. It's a functional mission, not a personal arc mission. I don't think that this is the only three things, though. So we've got the touchstones, which I have to really work on, but they're fairly easy to understand. The mechanistic stuff, which I've already finished, and the arc elements, which I have a clear path towards, but it feels like there is more that I'm missing here, because interacting with people is such a heavy thing. It's something that doesn't just arbitrarily come into being because you got a bunch of stats. Interacting with people requires, having gameplay with people. Number 4, juice. Playing with people is playing with Sims, let's call it, just to make it sure that we know what we're doing, is a very immersive experience. We need to chase the flow state. And this is tough because we don't have the same gameplay, so we need to come up with our own method of chasing the flow state. So, what does that mean? Well, in The Sims, the flow state is Sims version here. In The Sims, the idea of chasing the flow state is that you have several simultaneous agents, and then they all have missions of different lengths. So if each of these is one of your agents, one of them might be like boom, 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 and one of them might be like boom, 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 and one of them might be boom, 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 boom. And everyone has their own particular pattern of missions. Some of these are things like go to work and then come home from work, go to bed and then wake up again. Some of them are things like, okay, well, I am chasing that stat point, so we've got to read for 8 hours today. But the idea is that whenever the player reaches the end of one mission, so player reaches end of one mission and sets up the next, but is interrupted by another mission. So can't just wait other missions are available and are running. So if you have character A go out to work, you don't just wait for character A to get home. You send character B to go study painting, and you send character C to cook, and you send character D out to a party somewhere. And then as they trickle back in, you keep spooling up more missions and catching the ending missions as you go. And this produces a nice state of flow. It's sort of like juggling, if juggling was really easy. You're not going to drop very many balls, and if you do drop them, it's not a big problem. But the whole point here is you're always looking to the next element, and because you have so many simultaneous chains up, you're going to be putting one chain over here and letting it run for a while you deal with this chain over here, and then you got that chain over there. So you end up with all of these different lengths of mission, and you're always doing this just one more day sort of thing. And this is a really powerful flow state because these are self-regulating. Player-regulated missions. Because you're choosing your own missions for these characters, you're the one that's setting up when they come back. So if you decide that someone should skip a day at work, you can certainly do that. If you decide that they're not going to finish their studying today, so you've got to call them off of it and send them over to the bathroom because it takes 2 hours to go to the bathroom in The Sims, that is something you can do. You can figure out all of this pacing. So it's not like once you let go of it, it's just gone until it reappears. These are things where you're tossing it at a very specific speed, knowing that it's going to come back down at a very specific time. And even if you can't actually wait that long, you can always just reach up and pluck it out of the air. So this is how The Sims gets their flow. Now the other part of this flow that we can't underestimate, so don't underestimate. There's an E missing there. Personification. A huge part of the draw of The Sims is that all of these Sims are people, and they feel like people, even though they have no particular, their AI is crap. They're not very believable, but because they look like people and they have personalities that you've created and outfits that you've created and all that stuff, you can suspend your disbelief and you can treat them as people. And that means that these missions all have meat to them, because when you send someone away to work, that is something that happens in real life, and you can feel that echo. Like it's how would it be if that person really went off to work or whatever. And sure, some of these might be monsters instead of people, or they might be celebrities, or they might be your friends. But that adds to it. That adds that kind of gap where it's like, oh yeah, look, Frankenstein's going to his day job as a cop. That's fun. And so we do need to focus on personification. And personification is a constant reminder of the uniqueness. So over here we've got this touchstones. Over here we've got reminders, constant reminders of the touchstones. And Frisian with imported judgments. So that's how The Sims does it. This is a double whammy. It's like a right, left, bam, bam. And you've got to try and keep up with that if you want to try and compete with the same kind of feel. And this is where the weakness of my approach really starts to show. Because we can accelerate to any time, because of time cell, we don't get real-time events. We don't get those little moments. We know what's going on with the characters, but we don't see them. So we don't watch them walk over to the fridge and buy themselves the pizza. We don't watch them go to the bathroom or come home from work. All we really see is bang, bang, mission over, mission complete, next mission started, next mission started. So what we need to do is we need to load up our UI with touchstones, no matter the speed of the clock or how close the player is watching. So if we think about that, then we can think about it in terms of the Sims layout. So the Sims has a screen like this, right? And down here we've got the individual faces of the various Sims characters. And then up here you've got like the map of the house. And the Sims are on this screen too, but they're tiny, right? Now, the power of this approach is that these people are our constant touchstones. This is mostly for management. Unfortunately, that's not going to work for us, because we could be going at 10,000 times the speed of normal speed. We could be going at a day per second. All you'll get is a blurry, like, you know, the Flash-style red streak as your characters run around. So in order to make our system work, we're going to have to sort of invert this. So if we invert this, then we end up with a list of characters. List of crew must show touchstones and small events. So when we are looking at our ship, so if we have like a, here's our system here. We've got our ship. We might be looking at the whole ship, right? But we need to be able to look over here and see a blow-by-blow of what's going on at this very second or what recently happened. So, you know, you might see someone sword fighting with someone. Or you might see some people watching TV. Or, you know, whatever. You might see the captain ordering people around. Now, this is a lot of visual noise. One of the best things about the map approach, so this is visual noise. One of the best things about the map approach is that your eye naturally knows how to look for the things you want to see. It's not random. By looking at the precise location of a character, you can see what they're probably doing. If they're in the bathroom, you know that they're going to the bathroom, and similar. And you can always keep track of where the locations are so that you can look in any given place, or where the characters are so that you can track where they're going. It's much easier to self-direct your attention, so this is hard to self-direct. But there are a lot of options as to how to do this otherwise. For example, we could do some kind of a magnifying glass, right? Where it's like, oh, look, we'll just put the magnifying glass here. and you will see the captain ordering people around or people lounging on the couch or whatever. And because you have the ability to do that, you're going to feel self-directed. And we can have little pinpoints of activity along the ship to show you where you can look. And I don't think that's a bad idea. The question is whether or not it will be something which allows us to properly have flow. I'm kind of getting a dine and dash, or rather, what is it called? Diner dash sensation out of this. Because a lot of these are going to be gleams that just show day-to-day events, but a lot of them are also going to be counters, which when they're up, you'll have the end of the end of a mission and the start of the next mission. Anyhow, you can see why I wanted to think about this so hard before getting really started on the characters. A lot of these details are going to radically change the way that we try to represent the ship on the screen and the characters on the screen. These ships are going to be a lot larger than what we're used to, and the timescales are going to be a lot faster than what we're used to. So we can't simply show the ship and show the characters. It would be a disaster. The characters would just be flickering around. But we have a lot of opportunities to allow the player to choose what characters they want to see where. If you're going to spend a week in space or a month in space, and you probably are going to want to see certain characters in certain ways. So for example, maybe we could have the player select a character and then select where they want to see them on the ship and just create an event out of that. I was hoping to clear this up, but to be honest, I think I've made it more complicated. Well... Anyway, the backbone of these characters is also a concern, because there's some times when people are going to want to micromanage the characters, and a lot of times we're not going to want to have that happen. For example, where does each character sleep? For most of the times, it's like, who cares? But some people are going to be like, no, this character must sleep on the port side in the rear, and this character must sleep over here. And I don't really want to force one or the other. So I might have to have an algorithm which can handle all that stuff. Like there's a stats on the back end for where they sleep. But it's not something that will happen, it's not something that you have to care about if you don't want to care about it. And that's one of the reasons I've been making these designs. These rooms here are specifically built to allow us to have things like this bunk room. They're allowed to self-allocate and see how you can set these single beds up however you'd like. So we could just set it to unreserved, and then they'd be able to, whoever wanted to claim it could claim it. But you can also set it up to a particular character, although that's simply, it's right now just a stand-in. It's not actually working. But all of the characters are going to have, all of the crew are going to have some kind of backbone, which tells us where they sleep and that sort of stuff, if we want it. Because the other option is, well, screw that, who cares? As long as you've got enough beds, nothing else really matters. And a part of me says that would work okay, but a part of me says that really wouldn't work okay, because the interpersonal elements are what make this kind of game fun. And if you take out the daily life, or if you make the daily life really neutral, then you're going to lose a lot of that power, a lot of that fun. Yeah. I'm going to have to think about this. Recently, I've been doing a lot of visual novel stuff, testing out some fungus stuff, and I've also done a lot of thinking about gutting all of the genre conventions. Doing games in genres, but just deleting the genre conventions. And there are some really powerful techniques you can use when you simplify, when you cut away the things that have come before. And right now, I am shouldering two genres. I'm shouldering both the spaceship genre, and I'm also shouldering The Sims. Both of those have a lot of conventions. Now, the spaceship stuff, I've already started to shed a lot of the conventions. You can place components however you want. They don't have a specific cost in terms of minerals or whatever. They just have a cost in terms of the people who build them have to build them. I can also try and think of ways to do something similar with the characters, the crew. If I abstract out the crew sufficiently, you can get a lot more easy stuff done. But if the joy of working with people is in watching them interact, then that's not going to... We're going to have to come up with a different method of watching them. But that's not necessarily bad. Now, for example, you've got a bunch of games like Red Shirt, where the interaction is non-localized. I mean, the ship exists, or the space station in that case exists, but it's not like you are tied to physical locations. It's mostly about how you are interacting with the people. And there's nothing wrong with taking that kind of abstract approach, as long as the actual meat that comes out of the side, out of the other end, is solid. As long as you get that juicy feeling of people interacting, people having lives, people doing things together. And if I can't do that, it would just be a total waste. But if I can do that, if I can simplify, but still have those events, that wouldn't be so bad. And I think I can because of the time scales. There's this urge to watch at one time, but you're not going to last long like that. These missions take days or weeks or months. So my plan should be to take advantage of those long periods of time to fracture the player's approach. I need to fracture the concept of time so that the player doesn't think in terms of, oh, this player is, going from his bed to breakfast, or this character is going from his bed to breakfast and then over to the captain's chair or whatever. Instead, I need them to think of it in terms of, well, today he's on his captain's chair and he's doing something, or today he's asleep and he's doing something, and something is happening to him. Today these two happen to meet up in the cantina. Now, coming up with arcs out of that is quite difficult for the computer, but it's super easy for the player. And if I let the player control, at least partially, some of these events, then we end up with something a little bit more effective, a little bit more affecting than if I just randomly shoot stuff out. So if we take a look back at our diagrams here, the mechanistic and arc element stuff is what I am having a hard time with, in addition to the juice. So the arc element stuff, I'm thinking that some of that is obviously going to be based on missions. But even aside from missions, you're going to want to see development of the character within the ship, within the span of flying around. And you're not going to want all of those to be missions. Person A and Person B have to meet up. Person A has to fall down a flight of stairs. But if they happen randomly, then it's going to feel pretty stressed. It's going to feel pretty disjointed. The only reason that The Sims can get away with a whole bunch of random shit is because it has a non-disjointed feel. Its time flows very rigidly, and you don't miss any gaps. So if someone falls down the stairs in The Sims or whatever, it's like, okay, yeah, I watched it unfold, so I believe it. But in this game, that's not the case. If someone falls down the stairs after you've been time accelerating for 10 hours, then you're going to say, oh, well, it's just random crap that the game is throwing at me. So we have to be very careful. Let me go ahead and pick up the pen again. Don't roll over the cord, you bastard. My mic cord is in the perfect place to get rolled over. Squeaky chair. All right. So, random crap can happen in the Sims because time is contiguous. But if time is not contiguous, it will just feel random. Options. One, make stretched time feel contiguous. So this would be when you're accelerated to a day per second, obviously you can't watch the character walk around, but you can watch the character's stats slowly change. You can watch their mood shift, and you can watch buildup of things like karma, if that's a stat that's surfaced and stuff like that. And what that means is that you could watch a character's bad luck build up, and then when it hits a tipping point, they fall down the stairs, and you're like, yeah, I watched that unfold. And that would make it feel a lot less random. So we could codify the randomness, basically. I'm not even that. It's a show randomness coming as a stat. On the other option, make events feel less random. There's a lot of ways to accomplish this as well. Got some slow starter events, for example, where the event starts up as something relatively innocuous, and you get to try and guide it as it unfolds into something pretty spectacular. We can always say that, you know, this event is going to have a big conclusion of some kind, but the player will get to feed it. Whether that means slowing time down to a crawl while this event unfolds, or whether it's like something that unfolds every day or every other day or every 3 days. If we do it as that, you know, unfolds slowly over the course of days, it's basically the same as making the stretch time feel contiguous. It's just that it's, rather than the time feeling contiguous, it's the events feeling contiguous. Another way to make events feel less random is to give the player control. So, if the player has partial control over events, then he can go ahead and do whatever he needs. The player can set up events, and even if, like, 80% of the event is random chance or is forced in some way, the player can still choose things like who it happens to, or when it happens, or where it happens. And just by giving them some level of control, we can allow the player to we can rub off that edge of randomness. Like the player sees, oh gosh, someone just fell down the stairs. It was, and then Mad Lib style, you get the option to choose who fell down the stairs. That sort of thing isn't bad. I don't know whether it fits into my style of game, because it's not really very arc related, but it could be, because that would allow you to generate arcs. Like, oh my gosh, Henry just fell down the stairs again. He's always the one that things go wrong to, and that sort of stuff. It can be fun. And the other option is to have a really slick heuristic. It's possible to determine these kinds of things, so we have really smooth arcs and stuff like that, and so nothing will feel random because everything flows so naturally. You fast forward a week, Doug falls down the stairs, but for some reason it feels right. You knew that Doug was going to fall down the stairs. Whether that's because, we predicted something like that, or whether, like, Doug broke his shoelaces a week ago, and then today he falls down the stairs. Falling down the stairs is a bad example, though, because you'd have to really carefully build these events so that they don't feel random. So falling down the stairs is always going to feel random unless it's, Doug was pushed down the stairs and we know who pushed him. Then it's not going to feel random anymore. And that would be an example of how to set up this kind of event. And another option is to long tail it. So Doug falls down the stairs, and that feels random. But it's not Doug falls down the stairs plus 1 damage or whatever. It's Doug falls down the stairs, and now you have to deal with that. Doug is injured. Medical bay. Do you have a medical bay with a good ability to fix Doug's knee up while Doug is off? He can't really walk around or anything. So can your other crew members pick up the slack? Will you have to put sideline a mission maybe for a couple of days? Can you use this while Doug is stuck in the medical bay? He can study. So by giving it a long tail, you can make the event, when the first snap will feel random. You're like, Doug fell down the stairs, and the player's like, oh, for fuck's sake. But then you get to see it unfold, and by giving the player that kind of control after the fact, it goes from being something random to being something that the player has to deal with. It becomes a level instead of an event, if you see what I mean. And those are all interesting ways to think about it. At least I think they're interesting. Well, this has been kind of productive. I'm starting to think in some cool ways. I'm not 100% sold on this. I think I might have to give it a day or two while I think about it. Also, my throat's going. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but I don't have much volume coming out of my voice today. Kind of like I swallowed a fire ant. And my coffee is squeaking. Alright. I normally don't try and cut it short, unless I'm really exhausted, and I'm really not exhausted. But it's clear that I've gotten a lot of thinking done, and I have to do a lot more thinking just kind of in the background of my head for a day or two. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this particular stream short. And I don't know precisely what's going on. There's some kind of game dev weekend retreat or something. I wasn't paying attention. And everyone's watching that, and that's fine. I'm glad that the community's having fun together. But there's really no point in me trying to push on some random stuff. This feels like it was a good episode, I guess you could say. And going and doing programming now would just make me forget to mull this over, and it would also make the episode feel half-assed. So I'm going to stop. I'll be in chat for a little while, and feel free to comment on this video long after the fact if you find it on YouTube or whatever.